Hey there everyone, this is Michael Zugel, the nootropic reviewer, and surprisingly, I have completely changed my mind about Phenibut. Back a couple of years ago, I made a video titled Why I've Never Used Phenibut, and I pretty much only talked negatively about Phenibut in that video. However, now I have learned that Phenibut does actually have a good benefit to it that you can't find across other nootropics. So definitely learn from my experience with Phenibut. Although I disliked it before, I've suddenly learned to like it, which means you cannot always judge a nootropic based on the first time you have it, or based on even the first product you have. It's happened countless times that I've returned to a nootropic a few years afterwards and I suddenly like it. So with Phenibut, initially I decided to try it from a few vendors that were reputable vendors, but not reputable necessarily with Phenibut. But then I learned about this company called Lift Mode, and apparently they had like the best Phenibut. So it's the Phenibut FAA, the free amino acid. As reported over here, we could see benefits with anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. Some people use it, and actually symptoms of depression. But that's where you can actually get in a pretty bad trap of using Phenibut on a daily basis, which I never recommend anybody to do, because one of the most common problems with Phenibut is the risk of addiction, and that people are taking it, they're needing to consume more and more, and then they get off of Phenibut and they really feel horrible. They don't want to interact, and it actually causes people to have decreased energy levels during that withdrawal period. So what I specifically like about Phenibut isn't necessarily the decreased anxiety or the slight uplift in energy, but where I think it has a neat use is for sleeping. And surprisingly, it works really, really well. The category of nootropic supplements that Phenibut would fall under would be those nootropics that you would use as desired. You would not have them in a regimen where you're taking on a daily basis, like rhodiola rosea or ashwagandha. This is more like when you need something. So some people may need like a pick-me-up, let's say if they're going to a function and they want to feel somewhat energized, somewhat extroverted. Phenibut can be fairly popular in choice that way. Some people actually claim that Phenibut makes you feel the same as when you're drinking a little bit of alcohol. Now, I've not really found that to be true. I'm better off taking like some caffeine or a little bit of coffee to get me in the mood to want to socialize with people. But Phenibut, I can see who it can maybe work for. Maybe somebody stressed, maybe somebody with a little bit of anxiety. As reported over here, it ranks actually as one of the best nootropics you can use for anxiety and for mood. Yet, at the same time, with Phenibut, what I dislike about it is that I do not see it very good for productivity. I have learned that when I use Phenibut, I'm pretty much only going to want to take it towards the end of the day because I use it for sleep. That's it. If I use Phenibut in the middle of the day or in the beginning of the day, I'm far less structured. I cannot follow my schedule. I will want to be more spontaneous and just have fun during the course of the day, which isn't good for every day. I can see it may be useful perhaps if you're like traveling or you're having a day off. But if you think that you can get more work done with Phenibut, I highly doubt it, though I've seen people report experiences that are different than mine. So you'll know after you try the product, not that I'm recommending you do so. But what I like about it specifically is going to be sleep. So the way that I'm using Phenibut is within a few hours of going to sleep, I'm using like 1 to 2 grams, or some days only 500 milligrams. Like one way in which Phenibut works really well for me is on those days when I take phenylparacetam in the morning, I find it very challenging to fall asleep. Phenylparacetam, there's something about it which it's so energizing, it really keeps me awake. I've talked about it in this video over here. And what I like about Phenibut is when I use Phenibut on those days, a few hours within sleeping, I can easily get to bed and I'm getting a nice rejuvenating and restorative sleep. And I can actually track my sleep. I've learned that Phenibut definitely does cause me to have deeper sleep. I've talked about the Oura Ring 3 during this video over here. It's a pretty neat sleep tracker. And with Phenibut, some people actually use it prior to sleeping, not only for that sleep, but actually for the sleep session 24 hours afterwards, because Phenibut is known to be in your system for a fairly long time. And now at this point, you're probably learning that Phenibut is definitely like a neat and unique nootropic, yet it can be a little inconsistent with Phenibut. There's some days when I take it and I don't feel anything the day afterwards, which is what I want. I don't want to feel withdrawals. And then there's some days when I'll take a big dose of Phenibut, my energy levels will be slightly lower. Nothing too significant, which is why I don't think it's a good idea for you to take it 2 days in a row, because then you're at risk for having withdrawals. But usually it's not something you would expect. And then the other surprise with Phenibut that I was not expecting is that it can be a pretty strong appetite suppressant, especially on those days when I'm intermittent fasting. Before my meal, I will not want to eat, or I just won't like my meal and it'll feel like I'm just forcing myself to get my calories in. So you want to enjoy your meal, have your Phenibut then afterwards. Let's take a look at the side effects, and this is interesting because if we look at the research done on Phenibut, side effects aren't often reported. However, there are plenty of anecdotes and people sharing their negative experiences with Phenibut. In this study over here, which showed the safety and tolerability of Phenibut, it clearly says that Phenibut side effects described in the clinical trials showed adverse events in only 5.66% of patients, meaning 5.66% of patients experienced side effects. And some of the common reported side effects were cardiovascular effects, insomnia, anxiety and agitation, hallucinations, and depressed level of consciousness. And this was a good study done with 583 patients. Yet, if we look at some anecdotes just online browsing through Reddit, in this Reddit post over here where the topic included be super careful with Phenibut, a user reported that they were taking Phenibut at 800 milligrams several weeks apart. Both times, 3 days later, so 3 days after the Phenibut use, they experienced 10 out of 10 anxiety, violent tremors all over their body, and then for 2 to 3 days after that, they'd be bedridden from fatigue. And the original poster, they didn't really post anything too negative, but what they mentioned was that it made them like music more, it made them more talkative, but it also made me drowsy, and I noticed myself bumping into things. That's how Phenibut is, in the sense of, like I mentioned, it makes you feel like you've taken a few drinks of alcohol. You'll bump into things. I don't recommend you take Phenibut before driving, for example. You're just kind of like wobbly. You're having fun. You're enjoying yourself, so it's not for those work days, but maybe something you could use perhaps on some time off. In summary, if you're considering taking Phenibut, I would say don't. You probably don't need it. If you're seeking something for anxiety, then you're going to be better off taking something like ashwagandha. And if it's social anxiety, like word recall, then I would consider you take something like aniracetam, because that really helps. I don't think that Phenibut is good around cognition and productivity. If you're wondering if Phenibut feels like the Limitless pill NZT48, it absolutely doesn't. It won't help with memory, learning retention, general sharpness, more so just better for the things that I mentioned in this video. But I've talked about some of the better nootropics and a NZT48-like stack during this video. I would rate Phenibut 5 out of 10. Maybe 6 out of 10, not higher, but it's definitely not a 4. Like, I don't consider this a bad nootropic at all. I think it has a good use for falling asleep, for calmness, for general like social anxiety. But of course, because of the risk of addiction and the negative side effects that people report, it wouldn't be a higher rating like a 7 or an 8. I may be just one of those lucky people that don't get the negative side effects when I take something like Phenibut. But at the same time, I've not really tried like too high of a dose. I'm generally sticking to something lower. What are your thoughts on Phenibut? Since the results of this nootropic are so inconsistent across people, I would love to hear your feedback. Comment below. And if you got value from this video, then consider subscribing. And if you'd like to chat with me one-on-one, you can do so over on Patreon, or send me a direct message on Instagram. Note that everyone on Patreon is going to get first priority. And be sure to join us on Discord, where we're having a 24/7 chat room and we're having a lot of fun while educating each other in a very time-sensitive way. I look forward to seeing you all next time, and thank you for your interest in nootropics.